Just sort of back to your education, mate. When you speaking about your races and you're talking through them, you strike me as very analytical about it. You don't seem particularly emotionally involved in when you look over your
Hmm.
races and you review them and you see where you can improve. Do you think an element of that approach is actually from your education, coming from a science background, obviously engineering background, or do you think it's more just to do
Hmm.
with you're so experienced with having to look over your past performances in swimming that's how you sort of deal with it?
I think it's definitely a combination of the both. Obviously, if emotions play too big of a role in your post-race analysis, but also in the lead up to the actual races, they can sometimes get the better of you. So taking an analytical approach can sometimes be the favourable route of the two. But on top of that, yeah, I mean, it's sport these days is such a science. It's such the data we're processing and the numbers we're going through really kind of interests the numerical side of my brain. We've got a camera system here at Bath, and we're able to break down frame by frame. We're working out the angles we're entering the water on the dives. We're working out the catcher angles at the elbow, everything. We've got biomechanists who are just trawling through figures and data. And, for example, after trials, I get sent a massive PDF document, and it's breaking down single meter splits and turn times and underwater distances. Stroke rates obviously being a massive part of it. So I think that side of it really is attractive to me, and I think that's a great way to break down the race. But at the end of the day, we're also not robots. We are human beings, and that's why psychology is such a big part of the preparation for high level competitions and elite sport. And I think the way these two come together is essentially what defines elite sport. I can clock on and say I've done a 250,000 meters at this percentage at this heart rate, this percentage on working on my speed, and I've ticked off 200 sessions in the last however many days, 100 days or whatever. But at the end of the day, on race day, it's 80% mental, 20% physical, and that's such an important part of it. But that's what makes elite sport so exciting, and that's where real kind of special things can happen.
Yeah, no, that's God. I mean, when you do really sort of start to appreciate all of the effort that goes into these performances, you start to understand why
Mm-hmm.
you guys are moving on at the rate you are. How about your nutrition since going to Bath? Are you has that changed much? Are you very careful about what you take in? I mean, what strikes me about you guys is that you guys are so, you're big lads. You got big wingspans. I mean, you're over 6 foot or what have you. To sort of stay
Mm-hmm.
fueled throughout the day for these sessions, but not taking too many bad calories as such. Is
Yeah.
that difficult for you?
Yeah, so since I moved to the Bath National Centre, that's one of the main differences. Moving from a small club to a national centre is the external support that's on offer, and nutrition being one of the main ones. We've got an amazing nutritionist in Brit Shrimming, Richard Chesser, who just helps us in all different areas. But yeah, when it comes to actual intake, you have to treat yourself like a Formula One car or something and giving yourself the right fuel. And while we do have this external help, it is very much down to ourselves as individuals. I've always been quite good when it comes to my nutrition, and that's just because of how I've been raised. So all credit to my mum when it comes to that department. But yeah, it is getting the right fuel in and the right amount and at the right time. It's so important. We work on race day timelines when it comes to not just food but supplementation as well, and that's just important as a day-to-day environment. I literally a few weeks before trials, I sat down with a nutritionist. I'd given in a food diary for over 4 days. I'd given it to him, and we broke down every single macro and micronutrient and worked out where I was slightly faltering, where I was high enough. And it is literally these 1%, 0.1% gains that are going to make the difference. But on top of that, it's another thing that is quite attractive to me because of the analytical side of it. I'm looking at every calorie I'm intaking. This was during a rather big week, one of the aerobic weeks we were doing. It's just interesting to see how many calories I was having to take on board, because my weight's staying the same. So that means my calorie output and input are pretty similar. But I'm looking at 7,000 plus calories a day,
Jesus.
just on just to fuel the sessions we're doing. And there were some days where it's like you can't get enough fuel in. The meters we're doing in the pool, and the rate your body has to recover. I've got to eat as soon as I wake up in the morning and last thing before I go to bed, just to get me through the 8 hours of sleep without having a snack and stuff like that. So it's really, really interesting. And then the interesting part comes as you take your training down towards race day, and obviously the meters drop slightly, so you have to alter your diet and your intake. And I think I hit the nail on the head, because my lowest ever skim fold, which is where they essentially take your body fat percentage on points across your body, as my lowest ever skim folds the day before I swam my 200 free.
Okay.
And that was the lowest ever in my life. So it's not a body fat percentage you can maintain while you're doing high level training, but it's a body fat percentage that you want just before you race. So you're not carrying anything more than you need to. So that plays a part as well. And it's all these tiny, minute gains that are so important.
God, I'd never thought about that. How sort of changing your diet towards race day, so that you can, I suppose you will need a different diet during heavy training and when you're racing. In terms of race day, do you? Some people like to swim on a little bit of an empty stomach. Some, prefer to, maybe have a slightly bigger meal. But how do you time that? Is this? I suppose it's back to the nutritionists at BAF. They sort of give you the best ideas and break it down for you. Say on that Sunday, it was the end of quite a long week of trials for you guys. How did you approach your nutrition on that day?
So yeah, trials was a weird one, because obviously we had to be in this bubble and we were only allowed food at the restaurant. We had in the hotel, we had to go and get boxes of food, eat them in our room, and sometimes it wasn't enough. And even though I'm not doing loads of meters, your calorie intakes are still quite high. I've got to do my calorie intakes even on my days off are still quite high. So yeah, it was a weird one at trials, and it's just trying to have enough and of the right things and being fueled enough for the races, because the last thing you want to do is have insufficient energy supplies when you need to step up. Because even though you're not doing massive meters, just the emotional and mental draining aspects of racing over the course of 5 days can burn a lot of calories and mean you need to fuel correctly. So it tends to be night before, big meal. So I haven't got to have loads for breakfast, loads in my stomach, and I'm not waking up hungry. But then I don't like to race on an empty stomach. I think that's another thing that it's just a worry that I don't want to concern myself with when I'm stepping up onto the blocks. So yeah, it's a normal breakfast. What I have on most days, just porridge and that kind of thing. You do my warm up, have a banana or something like that, and then the really important bit comes as soon as you finish and touch the wall. That's when it's like recovery shake, cereal bar, sufficient protein, sufficient carbs, get back, snack, lunch. If you have a nap, then another bit of food afterwards. And it's essentially recovering as best you can over the 6 or 8 hours you have between touching the wall at the end of the heat swim and getting on the blocks for the final swim. And that's when the nutritionist really plays his part.
Yeah, and it certainly came to fruition the other week at trials, didn't it, mate? Just back to you, sort of.